The Cook. A historical fiction of love, identity and fate by S.J. Yepsen. Chapter 9. The Mask of Elegance. The galley was a whirlwind of motion. Pots clattered, knives chopped, steam curled from boiling stock pots. The thick scent of butter and roasting meat filled the air, mingling with the sharp tang of copper from the dishwashing station. Kate moved quickly, clearing a tray of empty plates, her apron already dusted with stray crumbs and streaks of sauce. The first-class dining service was winding down, and the kitchen was alive with the usual end-of-shift chatter, gripes about difficult passengers, bets on who would sneak a sip of the leftover wine, and the easy banter of men who had spent long hours on their feet. She wasn't paying much attention, not until she caught a familiar name. Weatherby, someone said with a low whistle. Did you see her at dinner? Lord, what I wouldn't give. Don't waste your breath, another interrupted, laughing as he reached for a loaf of bread, tearing off a piece. You've got as much chance with that one as I do of captaining this ship. Kate didn't turn her head, but her ears pricked. She's gorgeous, though, the first insisted, like something out of a painting. A deep chuckle cut through the conversation.
Best let that dream go now, mate.
That voice, rough around the edges, tinged with dry amusement, belonged to one of the cooks. Kate knew him only by sight. A tall, broad-shouldered Irish-American with flour-dusted hands and an easy stance, like nothing ever rattled him. Gideon.
You lot can stand around talking yourselves silly, but girls like that, they don't look twice at men like us.
Someone groaned in protest. All right then, kill the fun while you're at it, one of them exclaimed, tossing a damp rag in Gideon's direction. He caught it with one hand, barely reacting. Kate had already stacked the plates on her tray, ready to move on, but then, quieter, offhand, like it wasn't really meant for anyone to hear.
But she sure is a beautiful little bird.
Kate didn't react, not outwardly at least, but as she hoisted the tray onto her hip and slipped back toward the service hallway, she caught herself smirking. So, he'd noticed Lydia, had he? She didn't think much of it, only that it was amusing. A kitchen boy admiring a first-class girl. She supposed it was only natural. Lydia had been turning heads from the moment she set foot on this ship. The first-class dining salon emptied slowly, guests lingering over the last sips of port and idle conversation. Kate, her feet aching and hands sore, hurried to clear the final plates, her breath coming in measured, controlled inhales. The scent of fine cigars and lingering perfume clung to the air, mixing with the rich aroma of roasted meats and decadent sauces. Kate had survived her first full evening of service. The weight of her exhaustion was second only to the unease settling deep in her stomach. Serving was nothing new to her, but serving here, among the glistening chandeliers and white-gloved aristocrats, was an entirely different experience. As she returned to the galley with the last of the used silverware, she caught sight of another stewardess emerging from the service corridor, likely returning dishes from one of the first-class suites. Not quite what you imagined, is it? The woman said, watching as Kate placed the utensils into a waiting basin. Kate exhaled a quiet laugh. No, not quite. The woman whose name was Marie gave a sympathetic nod. You'll get used to it. The trick is to keep your head down and your hands busy, and never ever let them see you hesitate. Kate nodded, absorbing the advice. She had only just begun to understand the careful dance of servitude aboard the Titanic. Tomorrow she would have to learn even more. After the dinner service concluded, Lydia had returned to her lavish first-class cabin, her cheeks still flushed from the evening's wine and conversation. Kate finished her work, then arrived to assist Lydia before bedtime. Lydia, reclining on the chaise lounge, watched Kate move about the room, tidying the vanity where her silk gloves, pearl earrings, and delicate perfume bottles were scattered. You should come with me to the lounge, Lydia said suddenly, stretching like a spoiled cat. Kate turned, puzzled. Come with you where? Back to first class. After dinner, the real evening begins. Cards, drinks, conversation. Well, mostly dull conversation. But why shouldn't you enjoy a little of it? It's not as though anyone will question it. Kate hesitated. I don't have anything suitable to wear. Lydia smirked, moving to her grand mahogany wardrobe, its doors creaking open to reveal a cascade of silk, chiffon, and lace in shades of midnight blue, soft lavender, and deep ruby red. She pulled out a gown of pale champagne satin, running her fingers over the delicate embroidery before handing it to Kate. Here, put this on, she said. Kate swallowed hard. The fabric was finer than anything she had ever touched. Are you sure? Lydia grinned. You're my lady's companion, aren't you? It's only fair that you experience a taste of high society while you're at it. Kate stood in front of the full-length mirror in Lydia's suite, hardly recognizing the reflection staring back at her. She had just spent the past evening in stiff, scratchy maid's uniforms, carrying silver trays, clearing untouched plates of lobster and caviar, and scrubbing away at crystal glasses in the dimly lit service corridors. Now she was dressed as though she belonged among the wealthiest passengers aboard the Titanic. Lydia had chosen the gown for her, a masterpiece of champagne satin, shimmering under the soft glow of the cabin's electric lamps. The bodice was delicately embroidered with golden thread, hugging her figure in a way that felt almost scandalous compared to the simple dresses she had worn in Titchfield. The sleeves were sheer lace trailing over her arms like spun gold, while the flowing skirt whispered with every movement, the fine fabric cascading around her feet in waves of elegance and deception. Lydia had fastened an extravagant necklace of platinum with a diamond pendant around her neck, the cool weight resting against her collarbone. Matching earrings shimmering with iridescence grazed her jawline. Her hair, which had been tied back in a practical bun for work, had been loosened into soft waves, pinned with a delicate diamond comb that caught the candlelight. Atop her head, a platinum tiara sparkled. Kate took a shaky breath, pressing a gloved hand against her stomach. "This is madness," she whispered, unable to decide whether she was terrified or thrilled by the girl in the mirror. Lydia, lounging on the chaise with a playful smirk, merely raised a single perfectly arched brow. "You've done harder things than sit in a lounge and drink champagne, right?" she mused. Kate shot her a look, but Lydia only laughed. "Just walk like you own the ship," Lydia added, rising to her feet and adjusting the long satin gloves covering Kate's arms. "That's the trick. They never suspect the ones who look like they belong." Kate swallowed hard, glancing back at the mirror one last time. She didn't look like a maid anymore. She looked like Lydia Weatherby's guest, an elite passenger, an aristocrat, a lady of wealth and refinement. If she didn't make a fool of herself, maybe, just maybe, no one would ever know the difference. Stepping into the first-class lounge was like crossing a threshold into another reality. This time, Kate was not serving the drinks. She was being offered one. A steward dressed in a perfectly pressed tailcoat approached within seconds of their arrival, bowing his head respectfully. "Miss Weatherby," he greeted smoothly before turning his attention to Kate. "And your guest, madam?" Kate froze. Lydia, however, didn't miss a beat. "Miss Catherine Loring," she supplied effortlessly, as if she had rehearsed it 1,000 times. The name rolled off her tongue so naturally that Kate almost believed it herself. The steward nodded without hesitation, as if Kate had always been a first-class guest, before offering them both delicate crystal flutes of champagne. Kate hesitated, her fingers curling around the slender glass stem. The last time she had stood in this room, she had been carrying silver trays, balancing plates, and keeping her head down. Now she was expected to drink champagne, gossip, and pretend she had been born into a life of privilege. It felt like stepping into someone else's dream. The first-class lounge was alive with laughter and whispered conversations, a symphony of fine silks rustling, delicate porcelain clinking, and the quiet hum of an orchestra playing from the corner of the room. Groups of well-dressed ladies dripping in pearls and diamonds lounged on deeply cushioned divans beneath the glow of golden chandeliers. Their gowns were works of art, each one hand-stitched with beaded lace, intricate embroidery, and layers of silk and chiffon.
Oh, did you hear about Lady Davenport's scandal? Apparently, her husband has been seen far too often with that dreadful French actress.
Honestly, did you see Mrs. Collingwood's emerald necklace at dinner? Positively excessive, if you ask me.
The Countess of Hereford claims she owns a Fabergé egg, but between you and me, I suspect it's a forgery.
Kate tried to stay silent, but her curiosity got the better of her. She turned to Lydia, lowering her voice.
Do they ever talk about anything other than each other?
Lydia's lips curved in amusement.
Not if they can help it.
Kate let her gaze drift across the lounge, taking in the extravagance, the wealth, the casual cruelty wrapped in lace and diamonds. She had scrubbed the floors where these women walked. She had polished the very glasses they now sipped from. And yet, here she was, invisible, a living lie in silk and diamonds. A group of ladies seated near the marble fireplace glanced up as Lydia and Kate passed, their curious gazes flicking over Kate's gown, her jewels, her posture. A woman in a breathtaking crimson dress, her dark hair swept into an elaborate updo, lifted a single gilded opera fan to her lips and whispered something behind it. A blonde woman beside her, wrapped in strands of glittering pearls, smiled too knowingly. Her name was Mrs. Gentry. Kate felt her skin prickle under their stares, a soft laugh. She's new. Mrs. Gentry tilted her head slightly, letting her eyes trail over Kate's dress. The cut of her gown is Parisian, but the style is last season, is it not? Indeed, another woman agreed smoothly, smiling in a way that wasn't entirely friendly. And yet the colour is quite flattering. The laughter that followed was soft and honeyed, but Kate recognised the edge beneath it. They were testing her. Lydia, however, was unshaken. She turned, graceful, confident, untouchable. "Miss Loring is a dear friend of mine," she said, her voice smooth as silk, but carrying just enough steel to cut the conversation short. A brief silence passed between them. Kate held her breath. Finally, the woman in red smiled thinly. "How lovely," she murmured. "Welcome to the Titanic, Miss Loring." But there was something in her eyes, a glint of curiosity, of suspicion. Kate held her breath. One misstep and everything she'd borrowed, diamond silk, the name Loring, could vanish. Kate forced herself to smile. She had fooled the steward. She had fooled the servers. But had she fooled them? Only time would tell. The first-class lounge was grand, refined, and utterly dull. Clad in silk and satin, the ladies perched like delicate birds on velvet chairs, gloved hands cradling champagne as gossip lilted through the air. Lydia and Kate had settled onto an ornately embroidered sofa when the murmurs around them shifted. A name, Hollingsworth, floated through the air like a perfumed whisper.
"Tell me, Miss Weatherby,"
said Mrs. Gentry with a practiced smile.
"Have you decided whether to accept Lord Hollingsworth's proposal?"
Kate nearly choked on her champagne. Lydia, however, simply arched a brow, her lips curving in amusement.
Goodness, Mrs. Gentry. You make it sound as if I have the poor man waiting outside with a bouquet and a ring.
The women laughed, though their eyes gleamed with interest. "Thomas Hollingsworth is quite the match, my dear," a second woman chimed in, draped in pearls. "An English lord with property, title, and connections to some of the finest names in society," said a third. "And so very handsome too," opined yet another.
"Though I hear Miss Caroline Cabot is quite eager to claim him for herself,"
Mrs. Gentry said, feigning innocence as her eyes sparkled with mischief. Kate's brows lifted slightly. Lydia gave an exaggerated sigh, placing a gloved hand over her heart.
Ah, Caroline Cabot, the perfect daughter of Boston's Brahmin elite. If only I had half her modesty and virtue, perhaps Lord Hollingsworth would be utterly beside himself with affection.
More laughter. Kate took a careful sip of her champagne, lowering her voice as the conversation drifted on.
Who is Caroline Cabot?
Lydia smirked, settling back against the sofa. Boston aristocracy.
Her father owns half the shipping industry in New England. And Caroline, well, she's been trained from birth to marry nothing short of a lord or a duke.
Kate swirled her glass thoughtfully.
And she wants Thomas Hollingsworth.
She wants his title.
Kate watched the delicate bubbles rise and vanish in her glass, her fingers tracing the stem absently. She had first heard Lord Hollingsworth's name when Mr. Ashford mentioned him, but at the time she had given it little thought. It wasn't until Lydia confided in her about the engagement, an arrangement made in her absence, decided long before she could object, that the reality of his importance began to take shape. And now, hearing the way the women spoke of him, with hushed intrigue and knowing glances, stirred a quiet curiosity within her. Lydia leaned in, her expression mischievous.
You needn't worry, darling. I have no intention of marrying Thomas Hollingsworth. But I do so enjoy watching them wonder.
Kate clinked her glass against Lydia's, smiling softly. Lydia Weatherby sighed dramatically, toying with the stem of her champagne flute, half listening as the ladies in pearls whispered their latest rumours about which duchess had fallen out of favour and who had been seen dancing too closely with a certain married lord. Her patience, already thin, snapped entirely when a woman in an extravagant blue gown leaned in and murmured,
Of course, everyone knows the only reason the Earl of Devonshire hasn't remarried is because he's still in love with his dead wife. Isn't that the most tragic thing?
Lydia nearly choked on the absurdity of it. She needed to get out of here. She turned to Kate. If I have to listen to one more conversation about her husband's indiscretions, I will throw myself overboard. Kate, amused, leaned closer. There's another option, you know, she murmured. Lydia raised an eyebrow. And what's that? Kate swirled the last sip of champagne in her glass, glancing at Lydia with a smirk. Actually, one of the girls I worked with tonight mentioned there's a party in the crew quarters after the shift. Music, dancing, drinking. She tilted her head. Actual fun. Lydia perked up instantly. Dancing? She asked, her tone laced with intrigue. Kate nodded. Real dancing. Not the rehearsed kind with a numbered sequence and a correct posture. Lydia's eyes glinted with mischief. Sounds scandalous. She downed her champagne, set the glass on a silver tray and stood. Well then, she declared, lead the way. And just like that, they left behind the chandeliers, stepping out of the mask of elegance and into something real. Next time, in The Cook.
Excuse me, miss. These areas are for crew only. Passengers aren't permitted below E.
I'm not just a passenger. Miss Cook is my companion. I'm here with her.
It's all right. She's with me. We're not causing trouble.
He's already causing plenty of trouble, but the good kind.
Chapter 10, Descending to the Crew's Quarters, A Different World. Coming soon.